Welcome to Backchecking the Bolts. I'm Jason Linkus, and I'm joined by the managing editor of Raw Charge, Justin Godfrey. Backchecking the Bolts is your cup of coffee to get the latest on the Tampa Bay Lightning. We're breaking down the Lightning's most recent games, and we go beyond the highlights, telling you what the box scores didn't. Backchecking the Bolts will give you tactical breakdowns, player impact, and we're always looking forward as the Bolts vie for their fourth Stanley Cup. It's time to drop the puck. It's Friday, January 30th, and welcome to Backchecking the Bolts. From North Huntington, Pennsylvania, 15 minutes west from the hometown of golfing legend Arnold Palmer, I'm your host, Jason Linkus, and as always, I'm joined by the managing editor of Raw Charge, who's getting ready to see a slight chance of snow flurries in Dunedin, Florida. It's Justin Godfrey. Justin, how you doing today, bud?
Oh, it's a beautiful sunny day. I think it's going to be 70 degrees today. So it is the typical Florida winter where it's 70 degrees one day, 50 the next. And like you said, everyone's getting excited about the possibility of the first chance of snow since 1977 down here in the Tampa Bay area.
When you and I were together in Pasco County years ago, I always wanted one day of snow just to see what the reaction would be in Florida. What's the reaction going to be if it snows for the hockey game?
I think it'll be fantastic. I mean, that's all you could ask for a Florida game. Coach Cooper kind of joked about it after the Winnipeg win that Gary Bettman has some kind of weird magical power where he can control the weather and get a 35 to 40 degree game for an outdoor game in Florida. So you can't ask for better conditions.
If it actually flurried during the game, that would be absolutely unreal. Now, for the fans attending, it's going to be cold. I mean, let's face it, most people are not used to going to a Tampa Bay Bucks game when the temperature is in the low 40s. Do you think that's going to send some people away? I don't, but I mean, do you think that's going to send a few people not coming to the game?
I doubt it. I think just with the uniqueness of the game, people are going to brave any kind of chilly conditions. If it was to be rainy or windy in the forecast, probably you would see some folks come down. One thing you may see is there are, out-of-town fans may have trouble getting down here. I think you guys are expecting another kind of storm along the East Coast this weekend. I think it was on Reddit, somebody was talking about they're trying to come down from North Carolina and they're worried about getting back on Monday on Monday. So they may sell their tickets. So little things like that could have a little ripple effect, but it's mostly out of town fans, I think, trying to get here would have the biggest issues. As far as locals, we'll deal with it. We all have at least one long coat. And the beautiful thing about hockey gear is it is long sleeve and a little bit warmer than, say, football gear or baseball gear.
We got two games to talk about on this episode. First was last Monday when the Bolts returned home to face former Tampa Bay Lightning defenseman Miguel Sergachev and the Utah Mammoth. Utah came into this game sitting in the top wildcard spot in the Western Conference and red hot. They had a 5-game winning streak and points in their last 9 games, going 7-0-2. Unlike the last game in Columbus where, let's face it, there were goals aplenty, Monday night would be all about the netminders. This game featured 2 netminders that stood number 1 and number 2 in the league in wins. It was Andrei Vasilevsky for Tampa, and he would face off against Karl Velmaika. After a scoreless first period where both teams would combine for 23 shots, Tampa broke that scoreless tie with less than 3 minutes left in the second when Darren Radish blasted a one-timer on the power play from Kucherov and Gensel to make it 1-0. Tampa was trying to preserve that lead, but they were tested. It was Vasilevsky who would stop a Clayton Keller breakaway halfway through the third, and the Bolts had to kill a late third period Mammoth power play. The fans could finally exhale. 46 seconds left in regulation, and once again, on the power play, they came through with Anthony Cirelli, his 15th of the year, from J.J. Mosier and Kucherov to put the game away. Vasilevsky would stop all 28 shots and picked up his 42nd career shutout, his second shutout in his many career starts against Utah. The win would move Tampa back atop the Atlantic Division with 70 points. Now, Let's talk to Raw Charges Justin Godfrey and take a look beyond the box score. Justin, unlike Columbus, this was not an offensive explosion, and Andrei Vasilevsky led the way. Tell us about him.
Yeah, you mentioned it. I mean, it was that stop on Keller that, for me, was basically the huge inflection point for the game. And it really highlights what Vasilevsky does for the Lightning. You know, it was his best stop of the game on a night where he was pretty much tested. He spoke to the press after the game, and he said when he saw Keller coming down on the breakaway, his only thought was just to react to the shot. Don't overthink it, just kind of react. It was kind of an interesting breakaway, too, because Keller got behind the defense, but then he kind of fumbled the puck, which can throw off the timing a little bit. And Vasilevsky's big on his timing. If you ever watch him play, it's really kind of a rhythmic way that he makes stops. So to see the shooter kind of stumble a little bit there, you know, it was really nice focus on his part to stay with the play. He forced Keller to make the big move, the first move. And all Vasilevsky said he wanted to do was kind of stay low. He had a feeling that Keller was going to try to do a backhand, which he did. Vasi had the pad down, and it was, he was able to shut off that 5-hole. Overall for the night, you know, Vasilevsky was super happy with the way the game played out, which probably drives his coach nuts because Vasi really loves the busy games. The game before in Chicago, he actually mentioned it in the press conference afterwards that the Utah game for him was easier than the Chicago game just because he wasn't tested at all really for most of that Chicago game. He had long stretches where he didn't see a puck. So with Utah having 27 shot attempts in the first period, 12 of those got on net. So he loved that. He really gets him into the game, and he really prefers that. One of the things, you know, he talks about is he doesn't have to think. You know, he kind of said it with a smile and a wink that when he's busy like that, he doesn't have to think. He just reacts. And that's where you want your goalie to be. You want them to be in their own head where they're trying to outguess what the shooters are doing. So for him, if he can just react, make sure he's in the right spot, his positioning, his rebound control, then he's good to go. That's really kind of been the big growth in his game that we've seen. You know, when he first came up as a young kid, super athletic, he could dive all over the place, bend all over the place to make these saves. Now that he's, you know, almost in his 30s, or I think just turned 30, it's more about positioning. It's more about his rebound control, and that's what he kind of does. His ability to just direct stuff out of danger, either with his blocker or his pads. And he had a lot of those against Utah where the shot would come in from the point. He'd redirect it into the corner off into a less dangerous place. So that's really kind of been a really big part of his game this year where he's kind of back on that Vezina form. He's probably going to be at least a finalist. And if he keeps rolling like he is, there's a good chance he picks up another, Vezina trophy for his trophy case.
Now, the Bolts were coming off of probably one of their worst performances in quite some time, the 8-5 loss to Columbus. After giving up 8 goals, what did you notice in the Bolts' play coming into the game against Utah?
Utah is a good team. There's a lot of speed, a lot of youth on there. But one of the big things is, and Vasi mentioned it, is just the play in front. They kind of got back to what's been successful for them. Against Columbus, there's a lot of a loose defense, a lot of gaps, which Columbus exploited. Against Utah was back to that limiting chances. He's mentioned Vasi actually gave a lot of credit to his teammates about that. He may have faced a lot of shots, but he didn't face a lot of scoring chances. And against Utah, his forwards, his defensemen, they blocked 20 shots. That's a lot of shots for 60 minutes of hockey. So that's kind of where they're getting back to. One of the big features is, as much as Vasi likes seeing a lot of shots, he hasn't had to do that very much over this winning streak. I think since the beginning of December, when he came back from his injury, there's only been one game where he's had to make more than 30 saves. And that was against Colorado a couple weeks ago. So they're really kind of limiting those chances in front of him. Even if there is an initial chance, there's no secondary chances, there's no rebounds. They're doing a really great job of clearing out the front of the net. And you saw that against Utah. There just wasn't a lot of rebound chances. There wasn't a lot of second chance opportunities. And in today's NHL, that's kind of how goalies, especially the top tier goalies, that's how you have to beat them, is to get them moving around, second chance opportunities where they're out of position. And he's just not out of position right now.
This game came down to special teams. Tampa, in a 2-0 win, went 2 for 4 on the power play. Utah went 0 for 3 on their man advantage. Tell us a little bit about the special teams and how it impacted this game.
Yeah, it's that's kind of special teams and goaltending. Kind of your keys to victory tonight. And for the Lightning, up and down this year, whatever they've gone through, the injuries, the scoring droughts from time to time, one thing they've always been able to rely on this year is their penalty kill. Right now, they're at 84.6%, which is second in the league. Oddly enough, in January, it's down from that number. They're only at 83.3%, but they had a rough start to the month, to the end of December as well. It's kind of pulling some numbers here in the last 20 games last 9 games or so. They've been shorthanded 20 times. They've only allowed 1 goal, and that was in that Columbus game where pretty much everything broke down, which comes off a stretch where from the end of December to about the 10th or so, they gave up 5 goals and 13 opportunities. It was really their West Coast swing against San Jose and a couple other teams where they struggled a little bit. But since the 10th, they've locked it back down. Getting Ryan McDonagh back is going to help out with that as well. But they've just been really tight on the defensive end from a penalty killing standpoint. And then having Darren Radish up there on the power play has helped. Kind of gives them a big one-time shot from the point. As consistent as the penalty kill's been, the power play's kind of been the opposite. It's been up and down. It was down for much of the year. I think early on they were down around 15, 17% for a long stretch. Now they had the best power play in all of January, so it's bumped them back up. They're still not in the top 10 yet, but they're in the top half. Being able to convert on the special teams, win that battle, it's been really important for them.
Last night, the Winnipeg Jets came to the Benchmark International Arena, sitting dead last in the Central Division with 49 points. But after losing 11 straight games, they would come into last night's game 6-2-2 in their last 10. It was the Bolts' Dominic James who would light the lamp first at the 14:58 mark from J.J. Mosier and Darren Radish to give Tampa a 1-0 lead. It didn't take Tampa long to extend that lead when Darren Radish netted his 15th of the season to make it 2-0. Radish now has goals in 3 consecutive games. The Jets, though, they would respond. It was Kyle Connor, his 24th, slid one past Vasilevsky at the 12:25 mark to make it 2-1. But less than 3 minutes later, it was Yanni Gourde, live from the Acropolis. Not the same Yanni who does the opening to the Masters. He beat Connor Hellebuck for his 7th of the campaign from Kucherov and Radish to make it 3-1. The Bolts just put the clamps down on the Jets' attack. They only allowed 12 shots in the last 40 minutes, and Kucherov sent everyone home happy with an empty netter, his 27th of the season, and Tampa would win their 2nd in a row by a score of 4-1. Now, let's go beyond the box score with Raw Charge's Justin Godfrey. It looked on paper like a pretty easy win, but was it?
There were moments, that Winnipeg pushed back against the Lightning. One of the big ones was actually right after that Kyle Connor goal. Connor scores after the Lightning built the world's most dangerous 2-0 lead, as always, in the game of hockey. Nobody likes a 2-0 lead. So Connor comes down. He makes a really nice deflection. Vasilevsky never had a chance. It's one of those high slot deflections through a crowd. The very next shift, Declan Carlisle kind of takes a bad angle on Morgan Barron in the neutral zone, allows Barron to slip past him. So now down low, it's basically a 2-on-none with Tanner Pearson. Barron fires the puck across the ice. Backchecking is Nick Paul, and he makes a great play. Nick Paul is a big dude. He's got the long reach. He uses his pterodactyl-like reach to break up the pass. Pearson doesn't even get credit for a shot on goal, but had he gotten that puck untouched, it's probably a tap it into the near post off the 2-on-none rush. Right after that, there's another rush coming down the ice. Carlisle kind of redeems himself. He makes a great stick check to break up another crease front centering pass from Alex Iafallo. After that, the Lightning kind of got their rhythm back a little bit. 2 minutes later, they draw a penalty. With the delayed penalty, Kucherov jumps on the ice, makes a couple plays, finds Gordon a slot. Gord kind of jams a backhandish shot. It was a really awkward-looking shot because he's a left-hand shot right in the slot. With the way the pass came, he had to kind of tweak his body around, slides it past Hellebuck, who just lays on the ice afterwards. I don't think Hellbuck could believe he got beat with that shot, which probably registered a rough 35 miles an hour. But it was it was kind of one of those key stretches there where the Lightning, they did stumble a little bit. Winnipeg was feeling it after that goal, and the next 2 or 3 shifts, they were putting some pressure on them. And that's kind of one of the differences here that we've seen as the Lightning have had success, is they're not allowing the goals in bunches that they normally do when they struggle. A lot of times, especially earlier this year, they would play great for 40 minutes and then have this 5-minute stretch where they give up 2 or 3 goals. So their ability to maintain that even level has been a big part of their success, and we saw it last night. Like you mentioned, after the Gord goal, I felt like it really deflated Winnipeg spirits a little bit. You could kind of see the Lightning took over the game from that point. Another lockdown third period where they shut everything down. The Gord line was absolutely fantastic, matched up against Mark Sheffley and his line mates. It's just one of those games. It was a very workmanlike game, kind of, I'd hate to say boring game because they did put up 4 goals, but there was just, the Lightning just didn't allow Winnipeg much after that little rush, that little flurry there. So it was a very good win heading into, the Stadium Series Classic. So wraps up their West Coast swing here, wraps up the month of January with 11 wins now. So that's just a really good, solid effort from the Bolts.
So, Justin, let's talk about the injury front. Ryan McDonagh came back into the lineup against Winnipeg. It looks like Victor Hedman might be close to returning. Give us an update on the injury front.
Yeah, it's looking good. Even the other guys, Emil Lilleberg's skating again. I think Point's the only one who's probably hasn't been on the ice as far as their injured players. But getting McDonagh back was huge. He jumps into the lineup against Winnipeg. Hasn't played since mid-December, logs 20 minutes, 2 minutes on shorthanded time. Pairs up with his buddy Eric Chernak, which has been Cooper's go-to pairing since the Cup running years, pretty much since McDonagh came to the Lightning, and they've been together, and they're one of the top shutdown lines. It was a typical Ryan McDonagh game. He blocked 3 shots. Like I said, he had a lot of power play time, and then he actually had 3 shots on goal too. So this year is kind of seeing a little bit more offense from him. When he first came up with the Rangers, he was kind of that offensive defenseman a little bit. That's changed as he's as he's aged, but him and Chernak are just, a really solid pair. They're not the fastest of skaters, but they give Coach Cooper that reliable pairing that he can put them out against the top lines, let his top pairing kind of get a better matchup. The nice thing about having McDonagh back is it kind of stabilizes the pairings. He's not having to rely on the rookies, the young players, quite as much. Declan Carlisle, we talked about a little bit. Max Crozier were that third pairing. They play pretty well, but they don't have to be relied on as much. That's going to definitely change as well when Hedman comes back, and that's going to, lead to some interesting roster choices, I think, or should I say deployment choices for Cooper once Hedman comes back, which is scheduled. I think he's trying to get back for the game against the Bruins for the Outdoor Classic, but Hedman's really focused on being ready for the Olympics. It's a really big deal for him. He was spurned the last time the NHL was in the Olympics. He did not make the cut for Team Sweden, so he knows this is probably his only chance to play in the Olympics for his home country. He loves playing for Sweden, so that's kind of his time frame. So if he doesn't make it back for the Stadium Series game, maybe one of those games right before the lead up, just so he can get some ice time before he heads over to Milano, Italy.
You had mentioned about Point. What's the latest with him? How long do you think he's out?
Not much. They've kind of being a little more cagey about his injury. I think officially he's week to week. They do have him on injured reserve. So actually, hold on. Let me double check something on that.
Justin, you had talked about Braden Point still being out week to week. What's his status?
I think you pretty much said it. As far as we know, it is still week to week. He is on injured reserve, so he's not on, the LTIR, so that's a good sign. Also, another good sign, kind of not Lightning related, but Team Canada related, is they haven't announced a replacement for him. So I think they're still holding out hope that he can be back for the Olympics. It was a pretty, gruesome knee injury, the way he twisted back, but we don't have any details on what the actual injury is. We're just assuming it was either the knee or maybe the ankle, something like that, something lower body. The Lightning, heading into the game against Winnipeg, they have kind of struggled to convert goals with a Point out of the lineup. They've still been generating the chances, but not having him there, they're not finishing quite as well. So it was kind of nice to see them put a couple goals up on the board against Winnipeg without him in the lineup. But they're kind of hoping, he's back for the Olympics as well, and then get everybody healthy, and then for that big stretch run when everybody comes back and you're playing pretty much every other night through March and early April.
Yeah, you had mentioned to me, how many games do they have in March? What is it?
I believe it's
16?
Yeah, I think it's 16. They got a couple games right when they get back after the break, and then that schedule's a mess in March.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of games. You're going to need to show your depth. You're probably going to have 7, 9 defensemen that are going to be playing at certain points during that kind of a stretch. And this happened the last time the NHL went to the Olympics, where right after they come back, they compress the schedule because they want to be done by a certain date. And in order to do that, everybody's playing 3 games in 4 nights, a lot of 4 games in 6 nights.
Yep. And we kind of saw it a little bit last year with the Four Nations face-off too. When they came back from that, there were a bunch of games. And it does, health is going to be paramount. So I think that's kind of part of the reason the Lightning aren't exactly rushing any of their guys back before the break. McDonough probably could have skated earlier, but what's the point? They were playing well. You got a pretty good defensive structure. And then you're getting some of these young kids experience too. So like you mentioned, if you do need to go down to your 8th or 9th defenseman, now you got Carlisle has some games under his belt. Charles Edouard Destu, the big surprise on their defensive front. He's out injured now, but he's when he comes back, you got that depth, and that's really going to help out as they go down this stretch run and try keep fighting for the top of the Atlantic Division.
Let's take a quick look at the standings. In the Eastern Conference, the top team in the East is your Tampa Bay Lightning with 72 points. They're atop the Atlantic, ahead of the Detroit Red Wings by 2 points, but they have 3 games in hand. The Wings have had a tough stretch. They've lost 2 in a row. They lost 3-1 to the Kings early in the week, and last night they lost in overtime to the Capitals by a score of 4-3. But the rest of the Atlantic, the top 5 teams, they are not letting off of the gas. You have Detroit with 70 points, then Buffalo, Montreal, and Boston all with 67 points. Now, the bottom half of the Atlantic and the bottom half of the Metro have fallen off a little bit. Justin, the Bolts finally have a little bit of a cushion over those wild card spots.
Yeah, that's kind of, if we take a look at the big picture, they've had to go 11-1-1 in January just to stay at the top. But what it's done is really create that separation between the top half and then the teams fighting for the wild card. If you look at the first team out of the wild card, it is the Panthers. They're at 59 points. So they're 8 points behind Boston, but they're 13 points behind the Lightning now. So the Lightning have built that little, like you mentioned, little kind of padding in there to, if they do kind of scuffle somewhere along the line, they're not going to fall out of a playoff spot. And as nice as it is to win the Atlantic, and be the top seed in the Eastern Conference, their goal in the regular season every year is just to, get to the playoffs, be playing well for the playoffs. Once you get your seat at the table, anything can happen. Florida showed that last year. They were a wild card team that went all the way on into win the Stanley Cup. So with the way the NHL is right now, I don't think you have that much of an advantage seeding wise when it comes to the matchups. Just get in the playoff, get healthy, and run from there. A lot of these teams that are down towards the bottom, even the Montreals and the Bostons, they're going to be fighting for every point down the stretch here. They're going to wear themselves out a little bit. And I think it's really nice that the Lightning have been able to build that little cushion so that they're going to be in the playoffs. I'm pretty sure there's a 99.9% chance right now that they're making the playoffs. So, I'm no statistical wizard, but when you have that much of a lead.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. When you got that much of a lead, now, the calendar is kind of your friend when, you're going to start knocking off these games. You're going to have a lot of games between Eastern Conference teams. So I think you're going to start seeing some separation once they get back from the Olympics. And the Lightning just got to keep doing what they're doing. Let the chips fall where they may.
If you look at the Atlantic Division, you have Buffalo, Montreal, Boston, all with 67 points. Justin, take a look into your crystal ball. If one of those teams were to fall back and, let's say, work their way back towards the Panthers, the Capitals, the Flyers in the Eastern Conference, which one of those 3 is that team?
I was kind of looking at that, I'm putting together the season or the month recap column for Raw Charge right now. So I was kind of looking at some of the other teams. I don't know if any of them are what I would describe paper tigers, but I think Buffalo has some is playing a little bit over their head just based on their numbers. You look at some of their goal differentials in regards to like their expected goals, and they're shooting kind of a slightly higher shooting percentage than what they normally have. So I could see Buffalo kind of fading off. I don't know if they're going to, drop out of the playoffs. That 67 points is still pretty good. I think their goaltender, Ukko-Pekka Laakkonen, I'm just going to stick with that as a pronunciation.
Yeah, we'll go with it.
Yeah, I think he just went on IR for a little bit, so they're going to be relying on their backups again, which have been really good for them during their recent stretch. But I could see, if Florida does make their run now that Kachuk's back, Buffalo could be a team that challenges them.
I could see Buffalo also being that team that goes all in at the deadline. They haven't made the playoffs since Ryan Miller was their goaltender. It's been a long time, 15 years up in Buffalo. I could see them really rolling the dice and saying, hey, this is our chance to actually make the dance.
So Artemi Panarin to Buffalo, is that what you're calling right now?
Boy, Panarin wants a contract extension. He's 34. If I'm Buffalo, as much as I would want Panarin for this stretch drive, I don't want to sign him to a huge deal. He's an $11 million cap hit right now. I don't have the impression that he's going to want to take less. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think San Jose was coming out as one of the contenders, the team that's be willing to sign him to a big deal that has the cap room. So it is going to be a really interesting kind of next couple of weeks or so to see what happens with him. He could, and then, he could just be like, you know what, I am going to test free agency. One of the things that happened over the last couple of months is all these big names that were destined to be free agents, they've all signed with their teams. Panarin does go to the market, even at 34. He's going to be one of the top guys. He can probably command a nice, decent chunk of change on the free agent market.
He's going to be the hottest girl at the bar.
Exactly.
He really is.
He's pretty much going to be the only one left. I mean, everybody else signed out. So, I was really looking forward to, like, back in September, I said, man, this is going to be a great free agents. We're going to finally have, guys like McDavid on the market, possibly. I think Kirill Kaprizov could have been a free agent. And then they all just, kind of took the bag, which you can't really blame them for, especially Kaprizov up in Minnesota. If somebody's going to offer you $17 million a year or whatever the heck he's making, then how do you say no to that?
I still am waiting for Minnesota to pay down the road for having that much cap space tied to one player. But you know what? The cap continues to go up. That's just the way the league is right now. I mean, you have a superstar, you have to keep him.
Yeah.
Especially a young one. Now, Justin, it's the game that everyone's been talking about. Sunday, late in the afternoon, 6:30. It's the outdoor game at Raymond James Stadium. The Bolts and the Bruins. Tell us a little bit about what we can expect for the outdoor game.
It's the game they said they could never do, an outdoor game in Florida. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be chilly. It's going to have that Southern football tailgate atmosphere to it. Ticket prices are holding steady. So it's going to be sold out. It's going to be 65,000 Lightning and, I'd say probably about 60,000 Lightning fans. And based on what I've seen in the city, about 5,000 Bruins fans. They are starting to descend upon the city. A lot of black and gold around here, but it's going to be a blast, honestly. And they're talking about the conditions are ideal for everything as far as how they've planned it out. The ice is going to hold up. There's even a chance that they may have to warm up the ice a little bit just because, it is going to be in the mid 30s possibly for the game. So it's something they weren't anticipating that, they are prepared for.
That is something I never thought you would say.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. They take all these precautions to make sure, hey, what happens if it's 60 to 70 degrees? What happens if the sun is out there basking on it? So they had this huge plan, to keep the ice cold. Now it's going to be, what are we going to do to keep the ice, to a proper playing surface? You don't want it to be too cold. You don't want to have the players to dig into the ice too much. So you want that kind of nice little layer on top where they can glide across it. And that's what they're really focusing on. So it should be the atmosphere is going to be fun. I was at the game in Tennessee a couple years ago where the Lightning played the Predators at Nissan Stadium. And there's just something about being in a football stadium. Watching the game it's not the greatest on an outdoor game. You're really far away from the ice, but the whole energy in the building or in the stadium, I should say, is great. The pregame's great, everything that's going on. So it's going to be a blast.
Yeah, I was at the 2011 Winter Classic, and it seems like the higher you are, the better your view will be. But it's not your typical view at a hockey game. It's an event. So I hope everyone who's there enjoys it. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like the podcast, we'd appreciate it if you rated and reviewed Backchecking the Bolts. You can find Justin on Blue Sky, and be sure to visit www.rawcharge.com for the latest on the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm Jason Linkus, and you can find me on Twitter at Linkus25. Our next show will be Monday when we break down the Stadium Series against the Boston Bruins. Have a great weekend, and go Bolts.